The heat that afternoon was a living thing, thick and merciless, pressing down on everything like a branding iron held too long against hide. The sky had turned a sickly yellow-brown, the kind that warns a man something evil is coming. I was out by the corral hammering loose boards back into place, sweat burning my eyes when the wind shifted. It came in hot, hard, and angry, carrying grit that stung like birdshot. Sandstorm. Big one. I cursed under my breath and started for the house, but then I heard a woman scream raw and tearing through the howl of the wind like a knife through canvas. It wasn't the wind playing tricks. It was real, and it was close. I didn't think. I just swung up onto Raider, my old bay gelding, and kicked him hard toward the sound. The storm was already swallowing the world. I could barely see 20 yards ahead. Sand blasted my face, got in my mouth, my nose, my eyes. But I kept riding straight into the red haze, and there she was. A woman stumbling through the dunes, one hand clutching a battered leather valise, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Her white blouse was torn and filthy, her blonde hair whipping wild around a face pale with terror. Behind her, 3 shapes moved low and fast prairie wolves' ribs, showing eyes glowing yellow in the murk. They weren't circling yet. They were closing. She saw me and screamed again, the sound breaking into a sob. "Help me! Please, God, please!" She tripped, went down hard in the sand. The wolves lunged. I drew my Colt and fired 3 shots into the air. The cracks echoed like thunder. The wolves skidded, snarled, then scattered into the storm, vanishing as quick as ghosts. I was off Raider before he even stopped, boots sinking into the sand as I ran to her. She was on her knees, shaking so hard the valise slipped from her fingers. Her lips were cracked blood at one corner. Her eyes, big, blue, and wild with fear, locked on mine like I was the last thing she expected to see in this world. I reached down. She flinched at first, then grabbed my hand like a drowning woman grabs a rope. I pulled her up. She weighed next to nothing and half carried, half dragged her to Raider. She tried to climb up behind me, but her legs gave out. I swung her up in front of me instead, one arm locked tight around her waist, and wheeled the horse back toward the ranch. The storm hit full force then. Sand came sideways in sheets, stinging every inch of exposed skin. Raider fought the wind head down, ears flat. The woman clung to the saddle horn, her body trembling against mine. I could feel her heart hammering like a trapped bird. We made the gate just as the worst of it slammed into us. I damn near fell off the horse getting her down. She sagged in my arms, dead weight eyes rolling back, out cold. I kicked the door open and carried her inside. The house was dark and hot shutters rattling like they wanted to tear loose. I laid her on my bed, the only bed, and stepped back, breathing hard. She looked small there, swallowed by the old quilt. City girl, no question. Soft hands, fancy boots, scuffed to hell clothes that had never seen a branding iron or a dust storm in their life. And that valise still clutched in her hand, even unconscious, like it held every secret she owned. I poured water from the canteen onto a rag and pressed it to her forehead. Her skin was burning, lips cracked and bleeding. She'd been out there hours, maybe all day. Buck, my old hound, patted over and sniffed her boots, then looked at me with those sad eyes like he was asking the same question I was. "Who the hell are you, woman? And why did somebody leave you in the desert for the wolves to finish?" Outside, the storm kept screaming like it was trying to get in and take her back. I left her there on the bed and stepped out onto the porch to wait out the storm. The wind screamed like a dying thing, slamming sand against the walls until the whole house shook. Buck whined at my feet, ears flat. I just stood there, arms crossed, staring into the red nothing until the howling finally eased and the world went quiet again. When I went back inside, she was awake. She sat bolt upright on the bed, eyes wide, clutching the quilt to her chest like it might bite her. Her gaze darted around the room, the rough log walls, the cast iron stove, the single oil lamp flickering on the table. Everything was coated in a fine layer of dust the storm had forced through the cracks. Where the hell am I? Her voice was hoarse, but it still carried that city sharpness. This place looks like it hasn't been cleaned since the gold rush. I poured water from the bucket into a tin cup and handed it to her. My ranch, Arizona territory. Drink. She took it with both hands, drank greedily, then wiped her mouth with the back of her wrist. Arizona, Jesus, it's like an oven in here. How do you people not melt? I almost smiled. Almost. You get used to it. She looked at me, then really looked like she was trying to decide if I was the one who'd put her in this mess or the one who'd pulled her out. You're the one who... the wolves. I nodded once. She swallowed hard. Thank you. I thought I was dead. My name's Ella. Ella Davenport. Wesley Kane. She tried to stand, swayed, sat back down fast. I need to get to town. There's a stagecoach I have to storm just tore through. Road's buried. You're not going anywhere tonight. Her face fell. She looked smaller, suddenly wrapped in my too big quilt. They left me, she said quietly. The tour group. I paid them half up front in Tucson, promised them the rest when we got back, but my money belt got stolen the first night, and when I couldn't pay, they just drove off. Her voice cracked. The guide looked right at me and said, "You're on your own now, princess. Try not to get eaten." Then they laughed and left me with that damn valise in a canteen that lasted half a day. I felt something cold settle in my gut. I'd seen men abandon horses with broken legs, but a woman. Out here they took you as payment, then decided you weren't worth the trouble, I said. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Something like that. I turned away, busied myself stoking the fire. I didn't want her to see my face. Men who leave women for wolves don't deserve to keep breathing. Word travels fast in a small territory. 2 days later, I rode into Dust Creek for supplies and walked into a wall of stairs at the general store. Old man Hargrove leaned over the counter, voice low. "Heard you picked up some city girl during the storm, Kane." That's true. I kept my eyes on the coffee beans. Found her half dead in the sand. Wasn't going to leave her. He snorted. "Folks say she's trouble. Tourists always are. Best hand her back to that outfit before they come looking." I didn't answer. Just paid for my goods and walked out. But the talk followed me home. Ella was getting stronger. She still moved like someone expecting the floor to give way, but she'd stop jumping every time the wind rattled the shutters. She talked enough for both of us questions about the ranch, the horses, why I lived alone, why I didn't have a wife. I gave her short answers. She filled the silence anyway. One evening, she tried to make coffee and nearly burned the pot. I took it from her without a word, showed her how to gauge the heat. She watched my hands, then looked up at me. "You don't say much, do you?" "Don't need to." She laughed a real laugh, surprised and bright. It sounded wrong in my house, too alive. That night, we sat by the fire. She was wrapped in one of my old shirt sleeves, rolled up 6 times hair, still damp from the basin bath. The flames painted gold across her face, and for the first time, I noticed she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with city polish. Beautiful like a storm you can't look away from. She stared into the fire a long time before she spoke again. "They didn't just leave me because of the money, Wesley." I waited. "There's someone back east. Someone who wants me gone. Or married to him. Same difference." She hugged her knees. I thought getting away for a few weeks would make him lose interest. Instead, he paid those men to make sure I never came back. The fire popped. A log collapsed in a shower of sparks. I looked at her, then really looked and saw the fear she'd been hiding under all that city brass. "Anyone who'd leave you out there for the wolves," I said, voice low, "isn't worth the dirt on my boots." She met my eyes, held them, and in that moment, something shifted between us, like the first crack in a dam that's been holding too long. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows like it wanted in. But inside, for the first time in years, my house didn't feel empty. The days after that night by the fire settled into something I hadn't known in years' rhythm. Ella learned fast. She still cursed when the pump handle bit her palm or when a hen pecked her ankle. But she learned. Mornings, she helped feed the horses. Afternoons, she sat on the porch mending shirts with stitches that got neater every day. Evenings, we ate together beans, cornbread, sometimes rabbit if I'd been lucky. She talked. I listened. And slowly, the house stopped echoing. But I knew it couldn't last. One morning I was splitting mesquite out back, the axe ringing against wood, when Ella came running from the house. Her face was white as chalk, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Riders," she whispered. "3 of them." I set the axe down slow and walked to the front. Dust rose in a thin line out on the flats, 3 men riding easy like they owned the ground they covered. Black coats, good horses, rifles and scabbards, not local men, not cowhands either. I told Ella to get inside and stay away from the windows. She hesitated, then did what I asked. I waited at the gate, thumbs hooked in my belt close enough to the Henry repeater leaning against the post. They pulled up 10 yards out. The leader was tall, thin, with a face sharp as a skinning knife, and eyes the color of old ice. A city face, wearing trail dust like a costume. "Morning," he said, touching his hat brim. Polite as poison. "Morning," I answered. "We're looking for a woman. Blonde, city clothes. Name Ella Davenport. Heard she might have come this way after the storm." I let the silence stretch. Wind moved the grass between us. "Don't know any Ella Davenport," I said. The man smiled, thin and humorless. "Pretty thing. Blue eyes, mouth that runs when she's nervous. Worth a lot of money to the right people." My hand didn't move toward the rifle. Didn't need to yet. Like I said, nobody here but me and the coyotes. He studied me a long moment, then looked past me at the house, the corral, the water trough. Taking inventory. "Word of advice, friend," he said. "Some debts don't stay buried. When they come due, best not to be standing in the way." He tipped his hat again, and they rode off slow without looking back. I waited until the dust settled before I went inside. Ella was in the kitchen back against the wall, arms wrapped around herself like she was holding her ribs in place. "They're gone," I said. She nodded, but her eyes were huge. That was him. Not the leader that was one of Grayson's men, the one who always smiled when he threatened me. I poured her a cup of water. She didn't take it. "I can't stay here, Wesley. If they find me, they already found you." She looked up sharp. "I need the truth, Ella. All of it. Tonight." She told me everything that night. We sat at the table after supper, lamp turned low. Her voice was steady at first, then it cracked, then it steadied again like a horse learning to trust new ground. Her father owned half the grand hotels between New York and Chicago. When he died last year, he left everything to her. But Arthur Grayson, old money, older name, had been circling like a vulture. He'd courted her, or tried to. When she refused, he started buying up the debts, pressuring the board, making it clear marry him or watch the empire burn. So, she ran. Bought a ticket west, under a false name, joined that damned authentic frontier experience tour out of Tucson. Thought 2 weeks in the desert would give her time to think. Grayson found out anyway. Paid the guide extra to make sure she never came back. They were supposed to stage a robbery or an accident, she said, staring at her hands. Something clean. But the guide got greedy, decided leaving me for the wolves was cheaper. She laughed, then a sound with no humor in it at all. I was supposed to disappear. Just another silly rich girl who couldn't handle the West. I sat quiet a long time. Then I said, "You're not disappearing. Not while you're here." She looked at me, eyes shining in the lamplight. "You don't know what he's capable of." "I know what I'm capable of." The words came out harder than I meant. She heard it. Something passed across her face. Relief, fear, something else I didn't have a name for. Later, after she'd gone to bed, I stood on the porch smoking a cigarette down to the filter. The night was clear stars, sharp as broken glass. Somewhere out there, men with money and meanness were coming back. I thought about telling her to leave at dawn, take my spare horse, head south to Mexico. She'd make it. Probably. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I'd been alone so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to have something worth fighting for. And now, I remembered. The wind shifted, bringing the smell of rain from the mountains. Storm was coming. The next morning broke hot, and still the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. I was out by the well when I saw the dust cloud, bigger than before, darker, moving fast against the horizon. Another storm, but this one felt different, meaner. The sky turned the color of old blood, and the wind came in sudden, violent gusts that whipped the mesquite into frenzy. Ella stepped out onto the porch, shading her eyes. "That doesn't look good." "It isn't." We didn't have time to talk more. The riders appeared out of the haze like they'd been born from it 5 this time, spread wide, rifles already out. Grayson's men, they didn't bother with words. The first shot splintered the porch rail right by Ella's head. She screamed. I grabbed her arm and pulled her inside, slamming the door as bullets chewed through the wood. "They're not asking questions anymore," I said, shoving shells into the Winchester. "We're leaving, now!" Her eyes were huge. "Leaving. In the storm's our only chance. They won't see us any better than we see them." I dragged her out the back through the corral, where the horses were already panicking, eyes rolling white. Raider was saddled from morning chores, thank God for that. I threw Ella up first, then swung on behind her. She clutched the saddle horn like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "Wesley, I know. Just hold on." The first wave of sand hit us like buckshot. I couldn't see the barn 10 feet away. Bullets whined past blind fire into the murk. One tugged at my coat sleeve. Another kicked sand at Raider's hooves. I kicked him hard, and we bolted. The world disappeared. There was only wind and sand and the thunder of hooves. Raider ran like he understood this was life or death. Ella's body was rigid against mine at first. Then she sagged back, trusting me to hold her on. My arm locked around her waist. I leaned over her, shielding her from the worst of the blast. Behind us, shouts faint, swallowed by the storm. Then nothing. We rode blind for what felt like hours. Sand filled my mouth. My nose worked its way under my collar and down my back. Raider stumbled once, twice, but kept going. I navigated by instinct, and the slope of the land heading for the rocky cleft I knew lay northwest, a narrow split in the ridge where no horse could follow easily. When we finally burst into it, the storm's roar dropped to a dull moan. The walls rose steep on both sides, cutting the wind. I pulled Raider up, slid off, and reached for Ella. She half fell into my arms, coughing sand hair wild and coated red. Her hands shook as she brushed at her face. I thought we were dead back there. We're not. Not yet. I led Raider deeper into the cleft until we found an overhang wide enough to shelter us all. The storm raged outside, but in here it was almost peaceful, just the hiss of sand against rock and our breathing. Ella sank down against the wall, knees to chest. I unsaddled Raider, gave him the last of the canteen, then sat beside her, close enough to feel her trembling. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The light turned strange orange underwater. She spoke first, voice small. "You could have left me when they came. You could have handed me over and they'd have ridden away." I didn't answer right away, just stared at the curtain of sand beyond the overhang. "I considered it," I said, finally. For about 2 seconds, she turned to look at me. Sand streaked her cheeks like war paint. "Why didn't you?" I met her eyes. "Because I know what it feels like to be left for dead. And I'm done letting that happen to anyone on my watch." Something broke open in her face, then not tears. Not quite. Just a raw, naked gratitude that hurt to look at. She leaned her head against my shoulder. I didn't move away. The storm screamed on, sealing us off from the world. And for the first time since I'd pulled her out of the sand, I let myself feel how much trouble we were really in. Because those men weren't going to stop, and I'd just declared war on them. The storm passed in the night, leaving the world washed clean and strangely quiet. Dawn broke pink and gold over the ridge, the sand still damp underfoot, the air smelling of wet creosote and possibility. We rode back slow. Raiders' hooves made soft, sucking sounds in the mud. Ella sat in front of me again, not trembling this time, just quiet. When the ranch came into view, roof shingles scattered corral fence half down but still standing, she let out a breath I hadn't known she was holding. The riders were gone. Word had spread faster than the storm. Some drifter had seen them firing into my house, ridden straight to Dust Creek, and told the sheriff. By the time Grayson's men limped into town, coats torn and faces sand-scoured half the street, was waiting with rifles. The guide sang quick when the marshal put a boot on his throat. Names, dates, money trails, everything. Grayson himself never showed. A telegram came 2 days later, charges filed in New York assets, frozen warrants out. The empire he'd tried to steal was tearing him apart instead. Ella stood on the porch the morning the stagecoach came to take her statement. She was wearing one of my old denim shirts, sleeves rolled high, hair tied back with a strip of rawhide. She looked like she belonged. The driver asked if she wanted a ticket east. She looked at me. I didn't say anything, just waited. "No," she said finally. "I'm already home." We turned the ranch into something new. Fixed the fences higher, built a couple of guest cabins out by the cottonwoods, called it Davenport Trail's safe passage for anyone the desert tried to swallow. City folks came wide-eyed and soft-handed and left browner, quieter with stories of their own. Ella guided them, taught them how to read the wind, how to sit a horse, how to listen to the land instead of trying to own it. Evenings we sat on the porch together, same porch that had taken a bullet for her. Buck's head in her lap, my arm along the back of the bench, not quite around her shoulders but close enough. One night, the sunset bled across the sky like it was trying to outdo everyone that had come before. She looked over at me, eyes soft, with something I'd never thought I'd see aimed my way. "You never looked at me like a debt someone left behind," she said. "You looked at me like a person." I thought about that a long time. I just did what was right, I said finally. But maybe it was the rightest thing I ever did. She leaned her head against my shoulder. I let my arms settle around her. The wind moved gentle through the grass, carrying the scent of sage and wood smoke, and something that felt a lot like peace. And for the first time in more years than I could count, the ranch didn't feel like a place I was hiding. It felt like a place I was living,